Good afternoon. I'm Steve Lowry, the editor of the High-Low here at the Long Beach Post, and we are joined today by Sarah Rabinovitch. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, good to see you. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. We got a lot to talk about. Sarah is a psychologist. She is also a mindfulness expert. She runs a mindful studio called
Pacific
Sarah
Mindful,
Pacific Mind
MNDFL.
up on 8th and Pine. It's a great place to go, kind of get yourself calm, get yourself centered. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about today, is that under normal circumstances, life can be a little stressful. Under the present circumstances, it's kind of nuts. So Sarah's going to talk to us about those things, and she's actually going to show us actual things we could do like right now, today, to kind of help with that. If you have any questions, comments, if there are things that are bugging you, if there's things that you would like help with, please go on Facebook and ask a question, and we will be happy to pass it along to Sarah. Sarah, I want to start with that word, the S word. No, it's not that S word. It's stress. And I'm 58 years old. When I was a kid, people didn't use the word stress a lot, but stress has become as common in our lingo as cholesterol.
Yeah.
And it's like something that people just think you deal with, you know? I'm curious. I think most of us think of stress as this kind of emotional, ethereal thing. But there is no doubt that when we are stressed, we feel it very physically.
Yes.
It's there. Can you tell us what is happening with our bodies when we feel stress?
Yes, absolutely. Sometimes people say, oh man, I'm so stressed. And what this really means is that there's some stressor happening in life, give it COVID or at work or a family scenario, or even a stressor within oneself, like certain thoughts and worries or preoccupations that lead to a stress reaction in the body, just like you're saying. And oftentimes it's a very fast cascade of different sensations that are kind of amping us up for this fight, flight, freeze. And so typically you will see two different responses to stress. One of those responses is a real hyperarousal of the nervous system, feeling on guard, jittery, agitated, tense. In other people, there's actually going to be an opposite pattern that's more in line with a freeze response, feeling really demotivated, kind of like when you're depressed, feeling heavy, feeling slow and sluggish. This is also a way that we feel stress in our bodies. And knowing our own patterns is really important.
I did not know that, because I think most of us associate stress with the first scenario.
Right.
This kind of jittery and I feel bad and, and the second one, a lot of us will just say, I'm depressed, I'm sad, some people will be very judgmental and say they're lazy, yes, things like that. In fact, I would imagine around this time, Sarah, a lot of people who are spending a lot of time at home are probably dealing with that kind of self-judgment about, I should be doing more.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I hear that over and over in our classes, this kind of ongoing tape in the mind of, I should be doing more. I'm not doing enough. Why am I so lazy? Like you said, Steve, why aren't I doing enough? I need to be accomplishing more. What am I doing? Wasting my life? All sorts of narratives that are incredibly painful and self-defeating.
Is that a human response, or is that a particularly American response, that it is not enough to survive a global pandemic? You got to somehow, organize the pantry too. Are we just wired? Are Americans just wired that way?
I don't know. I mean, I know that a lot of Americans and a lot of folks in general, our classes draw from like all over different countries too. So it seems pretty universal, this beating oneself up, that in many ways, the science has shown us, like, we're a lot more readily drawn to negative information than positive information. We process the negative more frequently, more saliently. So it makes a lot of sense, and it can really drag us down.
Do we process the negative because that you mentioned fight or flight? Is that a safety thing, that if you're a caveman and you definitely want to be watching for trouble, and that has maintained itself throughout our species?
Absolutely. It's perceived threat. And of course, we're going to be processing threats, whether it's emotional threats or psychological threats, or like you're saying, physical threats, the environment, illness.
Mm. We were talking about if you're at home, and I think a lot of people probably when they said, "Oh, I get to work from home, this will be so much more calm, and I won't have to go to work and see that guy that I don't like," and all those kinds of things. I was a freelancer for a number of years, and I found there's this kind of process where at first it's this really great thing, and then after it goes on for weeks and weeks and weeks, it's not so great anymore. What kind of things are we battling when we're at home that we might be surprised to find?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think you're right on that in the beginning, it's kind of novel and exciting, even a treat to be home. And then very quickly, it turns into something very stressful. And, I've heard a lot of folks talking about balancing all sorts of different priorities, kids, pets, work, family obligations. It's really stressful. Here they are combined in their homes and not having the same resources as they might typically. And so it really, really wears down on the soul. I hear a lot about worrying and catastrophizing. Many folks like to have clear boundaries between their work and their personal life. And so it can feel somewhat invasive for some folks to have this setup now where their work is in their personal space. And how do I separate it? You know?
Right. I heard you mention kids, and I was looking at your website. You treat everybody,
I do.
including children. And it
Yes.
struck me that we get this kind of Madison Avenue view of childhood, that it's always innocent and you're smelling flowers and playing in the neighborhood. It made me think, I remember when I was a kid, I think I was way more stressed out as a kid than I am now, because your life is not your own.
Right.
Almost everybody else is in charge of your safety, your food, all this kind of things. The dog down the street is freaking you out because you think he's going to attack you and all this kinds of stuff. Um, is this a common misconception that somehow children are just so easygoing that they have no stresses in their life?
It might be because I know that many of the kids that I talk to now are struggling, especially some kids who have more difficulty learning or who need more social interaction in their environment. That it can be very isolating and really hard to retain information engaging over the computer, especially some of the kids that don't have a ton of resources and don't have access to internet and technology.
We're going to talk later about actually doing a meditation, so you'll get to see that. That's going to be thrilling. When you do it with kids, is it different than you do it with adults, or is it pretty much the same process?
That's a good question. It's really, really different. You'll see in a little bit when Steve and I do a mindfulness together with you that, it's kind of slower and introspective. And with kids, it's all about engaging in the senses, keeping it short, keeping it quick, keeping it fun, finding ways to really apply mindfulness to daily life so that kids begin to be reinforced by this process instead of pushed away by it.
Now, you call it mindfulness. We were mentioning that there's another M word, meditation. If it comes up, sometimes people kind of have a negative reaction. What have you noticed is the kind of, I don't know if it's a negative reaction, but that some people might feel like, that's not for me. What is it about the word that meditation that kind of freaks some people out?
Well, I think that, like, while I do use the word meditation sometimes, I've found that in other times when I'm presenting it to someone who's never done mindfulness meditation before, it can feel really daunting. Like, man, oh man, if the image is of some very kind of quiet and disciplined person practicing for 8, 10, 12 hours, days, months, of course that term is going to really scare people away. And so I usually use the word mindfulness to convey more of a secular and light and creative and flexible application. So,
And mindfulness seems to suggest more of an ongoing lifestyle than as opposed to, I'm just going to do this thing right now.
yes. And we'll talk about that when we do the practice today, that it's
Okay.
so important. And one of the biggest goals of the workshops and classes that we do at Pacific Mindful are really around helping people find their own mindful voice. Some people don't like to sit down and meditate or practice mindfulness for 10 minutes. Some people prefer gardening or kind of making themselves a nice cup of tea and applying some of the mindfulness to that. It's all mindfulness. It's all about the intention.
See, this is great because this is what I wanted to ask you. When we think of mindfulness or meditation, instantly people think of someone cross-legged on the ground, hands out, eyes closed, and breathing.
Yes.
But I know there are times when I feel like I'm going through a meditation if I'm walking just around my neighborhood or in a nice garden. My mother, when she's doing the Catholic rosary, I see her go from kind of here, and all of a sudden she's here. My Italian grandmother was the same way. Are there many more opportunities to get to that mindful place that we are unaware of?
Yes, and I love that you bring up the example of your mom, because here a lot of what the core of mindfulness really is the ability to control our attention, and developing the muscle of the brain is no different than, a bicep that we're curling. I use sports reference all the time because I played college basketball, but a biceps training, we're working our mind out, and the
Mhm,
muscle that is the mind really is our attention. And
mhm.
so we might notice ourselves engaged in, like you said, being outside and noticing the trees. And then we have a worry thought, oh crap, I got to get home and do this. If we're able to say, oh, I'm noticing the mind wandered, and grasp our attention very gently and place it back where we want to place it back. Let's say on the birds around you or on body sensations. Building that muscle takes practice and time. And
Okay.
that's the core of mindfulness.
Let's talk about that. A lot of times when we think about meditating, mindfulness, we think about being at home, almost alone, somewhere and isolated. But the fact is, when we need it is when we're sitting in traffic, is when we're in, again, times have changed, but we'll get back to it, where someplace crowded and someone cuts you in line or someplace like that. Is it possible to practice mindfulness while you're in the middle of, I don't know, Staples Center and someone cuts in front of you in the beer line? Is it possible to do it there?
It is. It is. I mean, we might have the urge right away to take someone out and say, I need my damn beer, get out of my way.
Right.
And so we think about mindfulness in many ways. An event happens, we have a reaction. Maybe it's a thought, oh, this jerk got in my way, I need my Coors Light, or whatever it might be.
You
We
know
have
me well, Sarah.
we have a certain urge in the body. Mindfulness helps us say, here's this event that happened. Okay, slowing it down. Here's this thought I had. What a jerk. Here's this emotion I had of anger. Here's this urge I'm having in my body to deck him or whatever it might be.
Mhm.
Is there some choice to choose to, instead of decking him? We might want to deck him, but perhaps we want to do something different. And mindfulness creates that space between our reaction and our action.
So show me right now. So if I am in line, that guy cuts in front of me and I have this kind of reaction, what's the quick checkpoint I go through to kind of bring myself back down?
Yeah, let me guide you through it, Steve.
Okay.
You might notice yourself feeling really angry. So you slow down. The first sign that we typically have is that the body, the emotion, we're feeling it boiling in the body, especially with anger. I might say, Steve, what body sensations are you noticing right now?
Okay. So maybe my heart is beating very fast. My chest is tight, right? My fists are clenched, right? Okay.
It's good. I might say, Steve, what thoughts are you noticing right now? What self talk is going through the mind?
I'm angry and I'm thirsty.
Good. And I might say, Steve, what urges are you having? What is your body wanting to do right now?
Act out. Tell
Act.
this guy he's a jerk, right?
Yes. And so we bring a real non judgmental, compassionate, curious attention to what's going on in the body, in the mind, in emotions. And we say, okay, so Steve, I'm going to invite you to just take a breath, a pause, and to choose now, based on your values, how you want to respond here.
Mm.
What did you notice about breathing? Did it feel like it quickened the pace of how things were racing through you, or did it feel like it slowed it down?
Slowed it down.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's mindfulness, creating that slowed down pause.
So what we would do in that situation, our mind would be Sarah at that point. Our mind would be talking to us almost as this out of body entity that is going to say, hey, walk yourself through this thing, get back to what you are, and then you can make a choice. And assuming when we can get back to that, we'll make the right choice.
Absolutely. And the way
Yeah.
that I teach our 5 p.m., we do 5 p.m. classes every day. And folks sign up for like 1 week. So they get this kind of one day, second day, third day, fourth day. And at first, yes, they're having my voice saying, okay, now noticing your thoughts. And then by that fifth day, I'm really taking away a lot of the instruction. And what people are noticing is their own voice saying, what are you noticing now? A voice that's gentle and kind and curious. So it's a really cool process to internalize.
By the way, I have to ask you, the voice that you do have is very kind and gentle. Did you have to develop that? Or, I mean, like, did you have to learn that? Or have you always just had this really cool voice?
Well, I think you're not everyone would say that they love my voice. I've gotten feedback too from others that say, I could barely deal with your voice or it's not calming. And so, we all have different vocal preferences, but I know that mine's kind of unique. It's like between a speech impediment and a really kind, soothing voice. So it seems to do the trick for some folks and not for others.
It's unusual because Sarah and I found out we're from our family's from virtually the same area of Boston,
Mhm.
just outside of Boston. And I can tell you, Sarah, I do not associate that area with soothing vocal tones. And let's just leave it at that, okay? That
No,
is not
not at
what it
all.
is. Hey, speaking of, you mentioned that you were an athlete,
Yeah,
played at NYU basketball.
I sure did a long time ago, but I
But she
know.
also let this drop like 2 minutes before we went on. I was like, Sarah, Sarah worked with athletes at Long Beach State last year, right?
I currently do. Yeah, I do.
And currently
For
do.
my pro bono, I work with them, and I worked with U Oregon athletes for many years doing programming and skills development, a lot of mindfulness.
Tell it. So, yeah, is it about visualizing victory, or is it more about, again, calming their body so that they can act the way they want to act?
It really depends. I partner with a couple of performance psychologists who are much more in the realm of um, helping enhance performance by using visualization and different mental techniques. My end of it, I'm not a performance psychologist or a sports psychologist. So I really focus on the emotional and mental side of it, meaning how do we help athletes reduce stress and prevent injury by taking care of themselves,
Mm,
listening to their body the way that you listen to your body in line at the Staples Center waiting for a course light. How do I tune in? How do I notice what I need? How do I challenge these negative thoughts that the only thing I'm good at is sports? So it's a
mm.
lot of life skills and stress management, I'd say, that I do.
Now, I heard you say that one of the things you teach them is how to avoid injury. You can do that through mindfulness.
Absolutely.
How so?
Absolutely. And here we go again with this creating a space. So many athletes are so driven. Of course, it becomes like a job. I know it felt like that for me at certain points
Yeah.
in my athletic career. A certain job, I have to perform and keep going. And we're really trained as athletes. I know you know this too, from playing some basketball, to push your body to the max without really regarding some of those signals that are saying, hey, slow down. Your ankle's really hurting. Or man, your heart's beating out of your chest. Maybe I need to get some water. So
Yeah.
mindfulness teaches this ability to take care of the body in a way that many athletes aren't used to. It's not always well received by athletes either, because again, that mentality is so different.
Oh, really? And what you described, by the way, could go probably for anybody working in any office or things like that. That they push themselves, and we almost feel like that shows I'm this term that I can't stand. I'm sure you can't either. Grinding, that I'm
Yeah.
grinding, is like a good thing, and I'm like, no, things tend to get ground down.
Yes.
That's the exact same thing, right?
Yes, it is. And many of the folks that I'm a mindfulness based stress reduction teacher, many of the folks that come in to mindfulness based stress reduction have something happen in their lives where maybe they are kind of diagnosed with um, early heart disease or high blood pressure or have a stroke. And suddenly that grind is no longer serving them. And
Mhm.
it's a really difficult process to say, man, I might have to slow down and see what's here, do things differently.
We have a question.
Yeah.
And it's a good one. Someone said, Sarah, do you have any tips for parents with younger school-aged kids right
Yeah.
now? So let's say the kids are at home and it's getting a little crazy. What can a parent do to bring some mindfulness to their kids?
Yes, that's a great question. I really like to use animals when I think about doing mindfulness with kids. So if you have a stuffed animal or a book about animals, whatever your kid's favorite animal is. It's really fun to integrate the animal into the practice. So you might have your kid put the stuffed animal on his or her or their bellies or chests and do some belly breathing. Do you notice the stuffed animal moving up and down as you breathe? And it can really anchor attention on the breath in a way that's fun.
Mm-hmm. We don't breathe right, do we? Most of it,
There
like
is
I'm
no
a, I'm a
right.
big chest breather. And when I used to work, I had a trainer at one time, and half the time we just worked on breath. Most of us don't draw up correctly, right?
We don't, and that can really activate our nervous systems. If you'd like, I can take us through a breathing practice that
Let's do it, Sarah.
with the nervous system. Shall
Okay.
we? Okay. So, Steve, I'm going to guide you through it, getting into a comfortable position.
Okay.
And you won't need to talk in this. You can just kind of move inward a little bit, and I'll ask some questions, but they'll just be more rhetorical.
Okay.
So, beginning by taking a few long and slow breaths. And noticing the points of contact where your body meets the chair, the floor, the couch, wherever you are. And then slowly shifting your attention onto your breath at the belly. And feeling free to let the belly just rest and soften. There's no need to hold it in or breathe in any way. And seeing if you can just feel the rise and fall of your breath in your belly, breath by breath. And when you notice the mind wandering to thoughts or to-dos, memories, wherever the mind might go, just noticing. With a lot of patience, making some space to notice where that mind went. And then gently returning awareness back to the breath at the belly, again and again, as many times as you need. Breathing in and out, your body knows how to breathe. And now, Steve, I'm going to invite you to elongate the breath a little bit. So sometimes when we're feeling stressed, we say, take a deep breath, but it's not taking a deep breath that helps downregulate the nervous system. It's really taking a long and slow breath. So breathing in nice and naturally, and then as you breathe out, seeing if you can breathe a little bit longer. For kids, I like to say, pretending that you're slowly breathing and blowing out birthday candles. So breathing in normally and then breathing out, extending the out breath a little bit. And so, Steve, for the sake of time here, I'll invite you now to open your eyes if they're closed and begin to reorient attention into the space around you. And what I typically ask in the classes is, what did you notice? Kind of a broad question.
What I noticed, the first was disappointment. I was still in the office. Second, what I noticed was when you said, just concentrate on the breath in your stomach, automatically my breathing centered there. It was like my body, just by me thinking that, my body immediately reacted.
Yes.
Like, oh, that's what you want? Sure, we'll do that.
Yes, our bodies have so much wisdom that they already know how to help us downregulate. I love that you bring that up.
Yeah, it isn't like one of these things where you have to fight it. It's just like, oh, I didn't know you. Okay, sure. Yeah, we can do that. And there it is. And that seems like the definition of mindful. I just needed to tell my mind to do that. And my body was more than happy to, like, instantly,
Yes.
yeah, take care of that.
You're really talking about the mind-body connection. And I also love that the way you asked yourself to breathe wasn't demanding or mean or, relax or focus here. You just said, bring your attention to the breath in the belly. So the voice we use, the tone, the language is so important when it comes to pairing up our bodies and our minds really with a lot of synchrony.
And I heard you mention something that I've taken yoga and they mention it too. It's absolutely okay if you get distracted. It's absolutely okay if you're thinking about, I got to get new tires on the car, right? Yeah. When that happens, all you do is
notice where that mind went. Notice and make some space. It's a celebration. Some people say it's like a puppy that wanders off. You say, where did the puppy go? And then you gently guide the puppy back. The puppy doesn't always want to come back, especially sometimes if we're caught in a fantasy thought or some kind of pleasant experience that we're reviewing over and over. So it can take some gentle coaxing and time to come back to the breath and the body. There's no pressure. It's a practice of awareness.
Sarah, we're almost done here. What's it like to do this when you're actually separated by the screen? How is it working with people when you can't be there right in the room with them?
Oh, I so miss being right in the room with people and being at the studio, but it's good for everyone's safety. And I have found it's so strange, these classes I've been mentioning at night, they're on my website if anyone's interested. It's just $10 a class. You sign up for 5 of them. And from folks from all over, it's so connecting that I thought it would be really a struggle to connect in a visceral way to participants' experiences and what they're sharing. But it's been a very beautiful and enlightening experience. So I don't know.
Well, I'll tell you what, we will post this chat later in the afternoon. We're also going to post information if you want to get in touch with Sarah, if you want to take some of the classes, which I can tell you, I did one for 3 minutes and I feel better. So that's any point. There it is. From one Italian, from one Bostonian, one from basketball player. Thanks a lot for doing this, Sarah. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks for bearing with and for having me. I really had fun.
Well, thank you. I wish I knew who we were talking to tomorrow. I don't, but I'm sure it's going to be someone terrific. Probably not as good as Sarah, but almost. So that's worth doing. Thanks a lot for joining us, and we will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Bye.